2 days of talking. Okay. Because I was going to say, you're going to need your energy. We've got 30 mistakes to go through in hopefully about half an hour, so we're going to go fast. Yeah. All right. Dumb ways to die. 30 ways to accidentally kill your studio. First, a little bit about me, so you know who's talking about the subject and whether you should take me seriously or not. So I'm Martijn. I'm a video game business coach, which means that, as I like to say, I help video game founders build better studios. I do that based on 50 years of games industry experience, an executive MBA that I picked up along the way, and so far in the last 5 years I've coached about 150 leaders and founders of video game studios, from indie all the way to AAA. And today we're going to be talking about dumb ways to die. So none of these are going to be like big bang extinction events. These are all going to be slow, hardly noticeable. They're little things, but critical things. And when they're unclear, they cause friction. And when you're causing friction, you're going to slow down. When you're going to slow down, you bleed resources. And the longer you bleed resources, the better the odds that you're actually going to die. So this is more like death by 1,000 cuts, or in this case, 30 cuts. So, part one, strategic mistakes. No clear purpose. If you have no clear purpose, it's going to be really hard for you to point the studio in any direction. So to give you an example, these are 2 Dutch studios. On the left we have Sokopop Collective, a really small team. They make small indie games. They work on each game individually, and on the right is Guerrilla Games. So completely different purpose, but they're very clear about what they want to do, and they're very successful in their own right. If you don't have a clear purpose, you're going to be all over the place. And then if you don't get incredibly lucky, the chances are you're just going to fizzle out at some point and die. So what you want to do is you want to actually get to your purpose. So one way to do that is, I like to borrow this from Jim Collins. It's called the hedgehog concept. So you answer 3 questions. What can we be the best in the world at? What are we most passionate about? And how do we actually make money? In the overlap between these 3 questions, that's where your purpose is. So you can answer that in a way like we exist too, and then fill that in. You've got a pretty good idea of your purpose. Number 2, no shared vision. Does anyone know this game? Fogs, there you go. I play this with my daughter a lot. What happens is, you each control one head of a 2-headed dog. If I do not coordinate with my daughter, she will try to go this way, I will try to go this way. You stretch, but there's a limit to the stretch, and then you sort of bungle back in the middle, roll around, and it takes a lot of time before you can actually do anything again. And it's exactly the same way with your studio. If you are not aligned in which direction you want to go, you're going to either stand still or just fuck up in other ways, and you don't want to do that. So, figure out where you want to go. What is your vision? What is your long-term goal? Again, borrowing from Jim Collins, we have the BHAG, the big, hairy, audacious goal. So in 5 years or 10 years, pick a date, but make sure you pick a date and agree on it. What do we want to have accomplished by then? Have a discussion, figure out what you want to accomplish, and settle on something that best represents the ambitions for your studio, so you can actually all move there together. Number 3, no shared values. Any fans of The Boys in the audience? So they have a shared goal. They know what they want to do. They want to kill superheroes, evil capitalist superheroes. What they don't have is a set of shared values. They cannot agree on how they actually want to accomplish this goal. So they bicker a whole lot, and actually to the degree that it a lot of times fucks up their mission, and they fail or partially fail. Same thing happens for your studio. If you cannot agree on the way you work, it's going to cause friction along the way, and again, slow you down and potentially lead you dry before you have a chance to be successful. So what you want to do is you want to actually look at your core values. What do we believe? What do we actually believe in? What are the values that we hold dear as a team, as a studio? And if you can make them explicit, then you have actually a set of rules or a set of guidelines that you all agree to want to work alongside, and you can keep each other accountable for, like, hey, we said we were going to do things this way. We said we were going to live up to this standard. And you have a much better chance of succeeding. Number 4, big one, unclear target audience. Does anyone know what this number represents? Unfortunately, yes. So this is the number of games published on Steam. Now that's daunting from a developer perspective. What I want you to think about this from the player's perspective. As a player, I can choose from close to 20,000 games every year. How the hell am I going to choose? So they're going to choose the games that appeal to them the most. The games that feel like they were actually made for them, as opposed to the game that you felt like making and thought like, well, maybe someone else will like this, maybe not. No. Try and make the game that someone can actually recognize themselves in. So you have to close that gap to the target audience. How do you do that? It's not just, well, we make games for everyone, above 12. That doesn't really work. Or men above 12, if you want to stick in the traditional category that we've been working in for so long. You want to think about at least 3 things. Who is your target audience? So that can be age, it can be gender, it can be anything that describes them as a person. Where are they? Again, it's not everyone in the world. You're probably focusing, if you're here in this room, on like English-speaking audiences for the most part, maybe even Northwestern European mindset. And that does something to your game design and to the way you're going to be communicating with your target audience. And then psychographic, how do they think about playing games? How do they think about playing your games? Why do they play games? The more of these questions you can answer, the better idea you have of who are these people, where can we find them, how should we communicate with them, and how should we tailor our game to their wants and needs? Because again, it's not about you, it's about them. If you want to sell anything, it's about them. No unique positioning. This is a little, it's not the best example, but it shows what I'm trying to say, I think. So these are all similar. So how do you choose as a player, like which one of these am I gonna like? So if you don't know how your game and how your portfolio as a studio is unique, how should the player know? How should they choose you out of the lineup? So one way to do that is you can of course look at your game, like how is this game unique? But then if you want to build a player base over time, you want to also know that your players understand how you as a studio are unique. What kind of games do you make? And one way to solve that is to look at 3 uniques, which is 3 things that in combination, they can only get with your studio. So the things separately can be something that another studio also makes, but if you can find a combination of 3 things to sort of triangulate, literally, what your unique positioning is, then people know what to stick around for, and they might actually stick around for you over time. Core business unclear. So we've gotten through a lot of things already. Core values, target audience, BHAG. You have that plan, but if all of those things don't communicate with each other, there's still so much room for miscommunication, for misunderstandings. And that's going to lead to wasting time, it's going to lead to lots of discussions that don't need to take place. And really the easiest way is to just take everything that I've just already told you are super important, put it in one place. You put it in one place, put it where everyone can reach it, and now everyone's clear on what your core business is, what we do, who we do it for, why we do it, and how we do it. Easy as that. Core business, clear. Poor internal alignment. Is everyone here familiar with Leroy Jenkins? Yes? So for those of you who are not, Leroy Jenkins is a character or a player for World of Warcraft in a raid, and what happened was, there's a very famous video of this, you can find it on YouTube. There's a whole raiding team discussing how they're going to kill the dragon. They're debating, okay, first you're going to do this, then you're going to do that. At some point, Leroy Jenkins says, all right, time's up, screams his name, and just runs into the raid. So of course, everyone just stumbles after him, and now the whole plan is fucked. And the same thing happens if you have your core business, but you're not super aware of aligning your whole studio around it, making sure everyone knows the plan and actually sticks to it, then it's useless. So what you want to do is you want to really build purposefully, intentionally, your people, the way they work and the way they set their goals. You want to build your processes and your systems around your core business. Everything should support the core business because you spend a lot of time getting that right. Never working on the business. So, if you're always in the trenches, if all of you are always in the trenches, then who actually has enough overview to sort of see what's going on and make the right decisions? You don't. So if you stay in the trenches, you die in the trenches. So what you want to do is regularly, you want to step back from the studio, from what's going on in the trenches, and just see what's going on, figure out the information, see the patterns, make decisions, plan ahead, and then you can go back into it. Easiest way to do that is quarterly offsites. They can be on-sites, it doesn't have to be some fancy resort, it can just be in your studio, just as long as you mentally take a step back out of the studio and think about what's going on and plan ahead. Priorities are not aligned with the long-term strategy, aka side quest syndrome. You have a plan, you know how to get there, you want to get there, but somehow everything you're doing week after week, month after month, it's just not really lining up to those goals that you had set, which is a waste of time. You're wasting precious resources. So what you want to do is you want to take that plan, the long-term plan, you know what you want to reach, then just build that back. So what do we want to get done this year? What do we need to get done this year in order to be on the right path towards our long-term goal? And then if you know that, then it's quite easy to build that back into what you need to do this quarter. And a quarter is very manageable. So now you need to know what you're doing this quarter, what you're doing today to be finished this quarter, to be finished this year, to be on your way to your big, hairy, audacious goal. And you're aligned. And while you have that, why not just add it to your core business, and now you have a 2-page plan where everyone in the studio can see exactly what's going on, how you're going to be working, what you want to reach, and how they're going to be expected to contribute to it. Part 2, management mistakes. So, people processes are not aligned with the purpose and the values. That's going to lead to this situation. So if you do not uphold your purpose and your people or your core values, that's sending a signal. People can tell that you do not actually value your core values or your purpose. It doesn't matter. And when one bird is sitting on top of the sign, sooner or later more birds join, and you've actually got worthless core values, and it doesn't matter anymore, and you don't have the studio culture anymore that you wanted to have. So you want to build your people processes around your purpose and your core values most of all. So that means you want to hire based on them. Make sure that you test for purpose and core value fit in your hiring process. Fire. If people are honestly not acting in alignment with your purpose and your core values, that should be a fireable offense. And 3 strikes, you're out. And then rewarding. When people are doing things that are in line with your core values, you want to reinforce them. That can be in monetary rewards, bonuses, if you are so set up like that, but it can also just be complimenting people when they're doing it, making sure that it's a public compliment so that everyone knows, like, okay, when I'm in line with the core values, that's value here, and that is rewarded. Or alignment between studio goals and individual and team goals. So what you have in that case, you have a plan, it's clear, but somehow your teams and your individuals don't really seem to be on the same page. So you've got a herding problem. You have a strategy on paper, but it's chaos in practice. And that means that it's now the job of a very few handful of people in your studio to gather around, trying to make sure that everyone gets back to the plan, and that totally waste of time, right? Because as soon as those people slip up, usually it's the producers. Any thankless producers in the room? No? As soon as they slip up, then everyone slips up, because no one felt it was actually their job to keep sight of the bigger picture. So what you can do, you've already got the quarterly goals. Then you can translate those into smaller goals per department or per individual even. You can cascade those all the way down, and especially if you do that in a participatory way, you invite them to think about their own goals in a way that lines up with the bigger picture. Then now there's much more commitment and buy-in. Unclear roles and accountabilities. Running a game studio is like playing a raid. Everyone has different roles, and every once in a while you run into a DPS check, and you have to perform, or you're just not going to be around for much longer. So either people have a very clear role and they're contributing to finishing the raid, or delivering the game and making the studio a success, or they're running around like a headless chicken and they're actually holding you back. So you want to be very clear on your roles and accountabilities. So for each role, answer what are the domains or the processes that each role is accountable for. So you want to give them maybe a handful, maybe 3 or to 5, and make sure that they know this is what I should be owning in the studio. And if you have that for all the roles, why not put it in one overview so that's clear for everyone where certain accountabilities and things are owned. So you can do that in a traditional top-down way. If you don't like that, just put it in bubbles. It works the same way, it shows the same information, but it doesn't look quite as top-down and hierarchical. You don't have the right people in the right seats. Not everyone is suited in the same way to every role, and depending on how you configure your team, you will get either really good results or you might not get so great results. And that means that in this case, if it's a car, your journey will take longer, or you might not get to where you want to be. So you want to make sure that you have the optimal combination of people, right people in the right seats. How do we do that? Right person. The right person is someone who matches with our core values. Again, this is why it's so important to check core value fit when you're hiring, because you don't want the wrong people in your studio that are going to be poisoning your culture. The right seat is for whatever combination of accountabilities and responsibilities. You want to check for 3 things. They get it. They get what is needed in order to really perform and deliver in this role. They want it. They want all of it. I really want to stress that point. They want all of it. Not just the perks, not just the title. They want all of the shit that comes with that role, because every role comes with shit. And they have the capacity to do it. If you can answer yes to all 3, they're in the right seat. If not, you might want to consider reshuffling people. Leadership meetings are inconsistent, infrequent, or both. Okay, so you're at the meeting, you're at a leadership meeting, you're stepping back, you're at a war table. You're trying to process information, turn it into a strategy, turn it into a plan. That's good. And if you don't do this, if you don't have that position where you actually align, if you're not aligned as the top team, it's really hard to get anyone else in the studio on the same page. So you want to take your leadership meetings seriously. And one way to do this is to just build a very simple rhythm. You want to have weekly meetings, which is where you drive progress on your goals and make sure that you unblock anything that is keeping you from reaching those goals. You want to have quarterly goals where you review and plan for the next one. You want to have annual goals where you plan for the next year. If you do this, then there's a place where you know information is going to bubble up and where you know issues are going to bubble up. And if you get into that rhythm, then you're always on top of things. One-to-one meetings are inconsistent, infrequent, or both. So back to the war table. If this is where you hang out all the time, you're missing crucial information. This is a good place to strategize, but it's not a good place to get information from the front lines. So you have to go down and actually talk to people and figure out what they're running into, because an open door policy, I'm sorry to say, doesn't work, has never worked. You're never going to get the information and the actual pain points that people are experiencing. And that means you lose out on important information, and your people lose out on support. So, one-to-one meetings, regular. The goal is understanding what's going on and for you to support them. This is not about checking in on their work. It's really about that understanding. You want to do it weekly if you can, twice annually at a minimum. Iwata used to do this at HAL Labs right up until he moved to Nintendo. He did it twice a year for every one of his 90 reports, and if he can do it, so can you. So what you want to ask is, if you don't, whatever you ask is good, but ask at minimum what's working, what's not working, and how can I support you, right? Then you get the most out of it. No structural approach to solving studio issues. I'm sorry to say that at most studios, at most companies really, solving problems is more like a game of whack-a-mole. We talk about an issue, we have a heated discussion, then we close the meeting, everyone has said their piece, they feel a little bit of relief because it came to the table and we discussed it, but then it pops back up the next week because we never actually solved the root issue and we never actually turned it into decisions and into solutions. So, easy way to solve this. Start an issue list. This is like a backlog that you share between the team. Any team member can put issues onto this log. That means everything is visible. All the issues that you are potentially facing, all the opportunities that you are facing, all here. And then every week at your leadership meeting, you prioritize and you pick one and you solve it if you can, or at least define next steps. And then if you've got time left, you pick another one. Even if you only do one issue every week, that's 52 issues that you're solving and turning into at least partial solutions, so you're never going to see them again. Poorly documented core processes. When there's no agreement on core processes, the outcomes of those processes are going to be inconsistent and unreliable. Now, in Michelin star restaurants, anyone watches The Bear? Yeah. So, in Michelin star restaurants, even something as small as buffing forks, they see that as something that matters. And if it matters, then it's worth doing right, and worth doing right every time at the same time. And it's the same thing for your studio. So if you can define what the actual processes are that add value for your player, name them, first of all, make a list of those processes, and then for each of those processes, make a one-pager. Just list the major steps and the major expectations for those steps, so that everyone at least goes through them in the same order and they don't skip, they don't take shortcuts, they don't try to deliver something else because they thought it was a good idea. No. Let's stick to that, and then there's room to color outside of the lines within those constraints. And then you monitor and you drive adherence, and you update whenever necessary. Not tracking critical studio metrics. So without leading metrics, you're always going to find out way too late that you're on fire. Because if all your tracking is lagging metrics or whatever you can see around you, the problems will have already been there, they've already metastasized, it's already way worse than it was before. So tracking metrics is like installing a smoke alarm, so you can actually know that you need to act before your entire house is on fire. One way to do that, studio scorecard. So just figure out the 5 to 15 leading metrics that tell you whether your processes or your structures are healthy, whether everything is moving in the right direction. Use that list, use it in your, track it weekly, and then you at least have something to underpin your discussions and your decisions. Unclear cash flow. So cash is to a business what oxygen is to a person. If you do not know your cash flow, that is like diving with a randomized oxygen supply. I wouldn't recommend it. So what you want to do, and it's a hassle. It's a hassle because revenue is easy, right? Cash flow is trickier because it might come in late, it might come in early, but it's so critical. So project the inflow and outflow of your cash, your actual cash, when you expect the cash to hit your bank account. Do that for a minimum 3 to 6 months, 12 months if you want to be diligent about it, because again, the moment from a sale, or the period between a sale on Steam or anywhere else, and the moment of your cut hitting your bank account can be months. So you want to take that into account. Updated weekly, if you want to be really vigilant about it, monthly at the minimum. No regular feedback from players or employees. If you don't gather regular feedback, how do you know what's working? So you might want to build all the way to a game that no one actually wants to play when you finally ask them. So you want to ask them early, and you want to ask them a lot. And the same goes for employees. If you don't ask them for feedback, how do you know that they're actually enjoying the work, that they're not running into problems that could very well be solvable if only you had found the time to ask them and get them to open up about it? So you want to gather feedback in a structural way. Again, for employees, that's one-to-one meetings. For players, you want to do external play tests. You want to do them as early as possible and as often as possible. And you want to do structural sentiment analysis if you're looking at reviews. Not just scrolling through, actually do something with that data and make sure that you process it and actually analyze it. And if you happen to work with clients, call them and just ask, what could we do better? It's really quite simple. Part 3, leadership mistakes. So this is where we get more into a little bit of the fluffy side of management, but which is important nonetheless, playing the blame game. So whenever blame is in question, people get defensive. Someone says, well, it's not my fault, it was their fault. So they become the persecutor. Whenever the persecutor pops up, the victim pops up, like, well, it's not my fault, I couldn't do anything. It was the externals that, fucked everything up for me. It was not my timeline, it was okay. Then the rescuer comes in, is like, well, let's not fight, we can figure this out. I will step in like I do every time. It's like, and nothing is solved. You're talking around the problem. Everyone is objecting or negating their own influence, and you don't actually solve anything because the problem goes undiscussed. So you want to take radical responsibility, right? That means that in any situation, every person involved has had some kind of contribution. And it's not always immediately clear, and it's not always very comfortable to admit that you had a role in it, but sometimes it can be as simple as, I ignored this for too long. I was hoping it would go away, and I didn't step in. I could have, and maybe next time I should. So you want to look at, how did I contribute to this problem? And if you start there, you can actually invite others to also think about it that way, as opposed to being immediately defensive about, I didn't do shit, and you're not going to pin this on me because I don't want to be punished. So you want to move from blaming and punishing to understanding and solving. Are we good on time? All right. Next one, arguing to be right. When you argue to be right, the odds of arriving at an optimal solution are close to zero. Because no one wants to then admit that they're wrong. It's a very human instinct. So as soon as you start arguing that way, then you get either one of two solutions, of person A or person B. And eventually everyone else around you just gets tired of the debate, so they just sort of slouch back. They don't even bring up problems anymore, maybe, because they are tired of the debating, and it never goes anywhere. So you want to start from curiosity. Whenever possible, you have to realize that you don't have all the information, and therefore you cannot have all the answers. And what is much more productive is if you can take a curiosity standpoint where you try to understand everyone else first, and their standpoints first. That helps you in your understanding. And then also, what happens is something really cool, which is they're much more open to trying to understand your point of view. And you can stay out of the loggerheads position. Leading from fear and anger. Just don't do it. That's easier said than done. We do it a lot, actually, because there are so many things that can go wrong in our studios. There's so much to be afraid of, even if we don't use that term, right? It's not a very powerful to admit, like, yeah, I was afraid this would happen, so I did this. No, we rationalize. We like to talk about all the things that we thought about and all the strategic weighings that we did. No, we were just afraid that something was going to happen, or we were angry that someone did something. The thing is, you want to recognize when you're doing it, because when you're doing it, you make very poor decisions. So the thing is, and this is a challenge to all my fellow Northwestern Europeans, you want to feel all of your feelings. We don't like to do it, we don't like to name it, we don't like to admit it, but we do actually need to do it. We need to build more emotional awareness. We want to know when are we feeling a certain way and how is it affecting our decision making and how we show up. Because when you do that, you can actually learn to recognize when you are in a mode where you are fearful or angry. And when you do that, you can try to shift yourself out of it, which is as easy as just focusing on your breathing for 1 or 2 minutes. And then you can go back to have an actual productive discussion without someone who's trying to figure out, why is this person so anxious? Why are they trying to pin this on someone else? Why are they angry with me when I didn't do anything? So, feel your feelings and breathe. Not enough trust for constructive debates. So, here's the thing about constructive debates. Whatever we call it, whatever the intended outcome, it's still a conflict. Yeah, we're still conflict, we're still trying to get to the right outcome with different opinions, and that can get heated. And in any situation where there's conflict, what happens, and we don't get the literal versions of this, there's no one threatening us with a knife, but we get the corporate version of this, right? We get the office version. So instead of fighting, we're debating. Instead of fleeing, we just sort of hide behind our laptops. I'm not here, just ignore me, I'm not gonna add to this. And so we enter into these patterns that are really not helpful. So what we want to do is build trust, because the more trust there is, the more people are willing to take a risk when someone else is saying something like that. I don't like what you're saying, but I'll hear you out for a second because I trust you. And this is from the Trusted Advisor. It's called the Trust Equation. There's 4 elements that you can actually work on very practically in order to build that trust and have other people trust you. You want to make sure that others see you as credible. I know what I'm talking about. Reliable. I do what I say I do. Relatable. They like me as a person. They don't have to love you. You don't have to be exactly into the same shows or games, but they have to know and understand you a little bit as a person. And you have to be team-oriented, and that's the big one. If you do not show up as someone who is team-oriented or outcome-oriented, if they have to be in the back of their minds careful that you're just out for yourself, then everything breaks. So that's the big one, team-oriented. Make sure that everyone knows you're team-oriented, and then you can support each other and actually build the trust needed for those constructive conflicts. People don't work on themselves. I'm sorry to say, everyone has flaws. We do. And that's fine. Some of those flaws are not really relevant to our work, but some of them might be. If I have a tendency to get triggered by certain words or certain things people do, that's going to show up in my work. Now, you can say that's just who I am, but that's not very helpful to the team. So, if at all possible, you want to look at your flaws and you want to invite everyone else to look at their flaws and work on the things that are holding back the team and holding back productive cooperation. So, here's a way to do that. It's called The One Thing. It's from The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Petra Lancioni. As a team, you reflect on your individual strengths and your weaknesses and your flaws. Then you publicly commit. You pick one of the things that you reflected on. You say, okay, I'm going to try in this year to fix or work on this part of this. I'm going to try to be a better person in this way. And then you can periodically check with everyone. Are we feeling that, are you all feeling that I'm doing better in this regard? And people can actually support you in working on those flaws. Not seeking regular constructive feedback. So, if you don't get the feedback, same as for your studio. If the studio doesn't get feedback, you don't know if the studio is heading in the right direction. If you don't get feedback, how do you know that you're performing to the best of your ability? You don't, you just hope that you do. So you want to actually address this, because if not, then small annoyances can actually grow into much bigger misunderstandings and eventually into rifts. So just use your regular one-to-ones for that. Just add one question, which is, what can I do to improve? And you can ask this from anyone, not just your direct reports. We're getting close. I know people might have to leave for something else. Not leveraging people's unique skills and talents. So if someone in your team is uniquely disposed to solving certain problems or tackling certain domains of work, you want to do your best to move them in that position and not have them do way too many admin work or stuff. And especially as you grow, you want to try to move people into the position of highest leverage and not get bogged down into stuff that anyone else can do just as well. We have other people for that. So this is called the zone of genius. So as you grow, you want to be aware of what work am I doing, and you can actually just make a list and plop them all into these quadrants and figure out What can I move, especially from the zone of incompetence, where I'm just not that good, it's just work that I got stuck with? How can I move that to somewhere where people can do it more justice? And how can I move it to my zone of genius? Where do I get the most energy? And where can I have the most impact for the studio so that the studio is better off? 28, team members are unproductive or distracted. There is a lot going on in any typical game studio. There's a lot coming at you from all sorts of directions. The creative process, as just foundational, is very, very confusing and chaotic. So it's very easy to get distracted and take your eyes off the goal. And it doesn't really help that our brains are wired to prioritize anything urgent over literally anything else. So if someone comes in, I need your help right now, you go, okay, sure. I'll drop whatever I can to help you. You've got to work really hard to combat that instinct. So staying productive, it really helps if you go back whenever you can, whenever you feel like you are drowning, go back to your role accountabilities. These are the things that I am supposed to own in my studio, so those come first. The studio priorities, these are the goals that we had set for the studio, and now I need to contribute to them, so that comes first. And if that doesn't work, then you really got to look at all of the work coming at you. You can do it with the Eisenhower matrix, if people are familiar with that. So the Eisenhower matrix is really another 2x2, so you figure out all the work I'm doing, all the stuff I'm doing, is it important, is it urgent, is it both, is it neither? And my colleagues at Kennedy Associates like to call this leadership alchemy. So what you want to get rid of is anything low urgency and low importance. If it's not important, it's not urgent, maybe not waste your time on it. Use that time to spend more work or to do more work in the high importance, low urgency part, because that is the work that continuously and structurally suffers in any situation. But that's actually where you can get the most impact. So all the strategic stuff, that's all high importance, low urgency. You can put it off forever until it's too late. Poor understanding of each other's differences, priorities, and styles. So we like to think, or it's not even so much a rational thought, it is an instinct or just an assumption about the way the world works. Everyone is more or less like me. They think the same way, they value the same things, and we are super surprised when people turn out to be very different, but the thing is, everyone is very different. So you want to be aware of that. Because the more you're aware of that, the more you can actually work to each other's strengths and support each other and get the most out of your cooperation. There's something called the Manual of Me. It's actually a website, so you can just go there and you can ask a whole bunch of questions, and everyone can fill in. How do I work? What do I like? What's my working style? What's my communication preferences? What are my strengths and weaknesses? What should you absolutely not do when you are emailing me, because it's going to trigger the shit out of me, and then we're not going to be able to work together very well. Or any misunderstandings, like when I'm thinking, I look like I have resting bitch face, and it doesn't say anything about what you told me. It just says something that I'm thinking, which is an actual thing that people misunderstand about me sometimes. Last one, trying to figure everything out yourself. So you don't have to figure everything out yourself. It feels that way sometimes. But there's ways to get information, to get expertise, to get solutions from outside. You don't have to figure everything out yourself. Right? If we look at the best teams, and they have great coaches. If we look at heroes, they have mentors or guides. And I'm just saying, this could be us. You don't have to work with a coach. That's not necessary at all. So you can also just read a book. There's a whole bunch of really great books. These are just the ones that functioned as input for this presentation. A whole bunch of really interesting frameworks, really good tools that you can just use out of the box. And then the other one is talk to your peers. So everyone, just look around. Everyone in this room wants to do better, wants to be better, wants to build a better studio, make better games. And even if we don't have the answers, even if someone else doesn't have the answers, we can talk about the questions together and figure it out together. And in doing so, we can all work together to build better studios and create a better industry for everyone. Good luck. Any questions about the deluge of information I just gave you?